There are 33 million Americans who think they have a retirement plan. They've been told their whole career that if they just showed up, did the work, and waited long enough, there would be money waiting for them on the other side. And for decades, that promise held. But right now, quietly, without any breaking news, or congressional hearing, or panicked economist on television, that promise is being broken. And most of the people it's being broken for have absolutely no idea. Because here's the thing about pension funds. They don't fail loudly. They fail slowly, then all at once. And by the time the headlines catch up, the damage is already done. But before we can get into why this is happening, you need to understand what a pension actually is. Because most people under 40 have never had one and don't fully understand what's at stake. A pension is a defined benefit plan. Your employer, usually a government, a school district, a police department, or a large union, promises to pay you a fixed monthly income for the rest of your life after you retire. Doesn't matter how long you live. Doesn't matter what the market does. The number is locked in. It's a guarantee. And that word, guarantee, is exactly where the problem starts. Because to fund that guarantee, pension managers take the contributions from current workers and invest them. And the math only works if those investments hit a certain return every single year. Most public pension funds in the United States are assuming they'll earn somewhere between 6.5% and 7.5% annually. That's the number baked into every projection, every funding calculation, every promise made to every worker. And for a long time, in a world of rising markets and falling interest rates, they hit it. The system looked healthy on paper. Politicians pointed to it. Union leaders celebrated it. And workers built their entire retirement around it. But that world is gone. Because here's what nobody is saying out loud. The average public pension fund in the United States is currently only about 72% funded. That means for every dollar of promised benefits sitting on the books, pension managers only have about 72 cents to cover it. And that gap, the distance between what's owed and what actually exists, is now estimated at somewhere between $1.5 trillion on the optimistic end and closer to $5 to $6 trillion when you use more realistic return assumptions. Some analysts who use risk-free discount rates put the true number even higher. We're talking about a hole so large it doesn't even have a clean number anymore, just a range that starts at catastrophic and ends somewhere worse. And it's been getting worse every year because the problem isn't just investment returns, though those haven't helped. The deeper issue is demographic, because pensions were designed in an era when there were plenty of young workers paying in for every retired worker drawing out. The math assumed a certain ratio, but that ratio has been collapsing for decades. People are living longer. Birth rates have dropped. The workforce hasn't grown the way the models assumed. And so you end up with fewer contributors trying to support more retirees, drawing larger and longer payouts than anyone planned for. The architecture of the system was built for a country that no longer exists. And here's where it gets interesting, because when a private company runs into this problem, there's a safety net. The Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, the PBGC, is a federal agency that backstops private pension funds if they collapse. And that sounds reassuring until you look at the actual numbers, because the PBGC itself has been underfunded. Its multi-employer program, which covers union pensions across industries like trucking, construction, and hospitality, was technically insolvent as recently as 2021. Congress had to bail it out with $86 billion from the American Rescue Plan just to keep it alive. That's a bailout of the bailout, but that still only covers private pensions, because public pensions, the ones covering 14.7 million state and local government workers across the country, teachers, firefighters, police officers, sanitation workers, those aren't covered by the PBGC at all. If a state pension fund runs dry, there is no federal floor. There is no safety net. There's just the state itself and whatever political will exists to either raise taxes, cut benefits, or both. And some states are already there. Illinois is the most cited example because it has a pension funding ratio of around 45%. For every dollar it owes, it has less than 50 cents. The state constitution actually prohibits cutting pension benefits, which means Illinois is legally locked into paying promises it mathematically cannot keep. New Jersey sits at around 38%. Kentucky is in a similar position. Connecticut, Colorado. These aren't small rounding errors. These are structural holes that have been building for 30 years, while every governor and every state legislature quietly looked the other way, because the people who made these promises knew they wouldn't be the ones around to keep them. That's the part that should make you angry, because the people who are going to feel this aren't the politicians who underfunded these systems while running on fiscal responsibility platforms. It's the 62-year-old retired teacher who spent 35 years in a classroom and now depends on a $2,200 monthly pension check to pay rent. It's the retired cop in New Jersey who took a lower salary his entire career because he was told the pension made up for it. It's the municipal worker who turned down private sector jobs with higher pay because the benefits felt more secure. These are not wealthy people gaming a system. These are people who made a financial decision based on a contract, and that contract is now worth less than what they were told. But here's the other side of this that almost nobody talks about. Because the pension crisis doesn't just affect the people who have pensions, it affects everyone else too. Because when a state is pouring an increasing portion of its budget into plugging pension holes, that money has to come from somewhere. And it comes from roads. It comes from schools. It comes from public services that everyone uses regardless of whether they have a pension. In Chicago, pension obligations now consume more than 20% of the city's operating budget. That's $1 in every $5 gone before a single pothole gets fixed or a single classroom gets a new textbook. The fiscal pressure from pension liabilities is already quietly squeezing state and city budgets across the country, and it's only going to intensify. And the investment side isn't helping either, because in a desperate attempt to hit those 7% return targets, pension funds have been moving into riskier and riskier assets. Private equity, infrastructure, hedge funds, illiquid alternatives that are difficult to value and even harder to exit in a downturn. And this has introduced a level of complexity and hidden risk into these portfolios that most pensioners have no idea exists, because they were told their retirement was in safe hands. But safe hands started quietly chasing return a long time ago, taking on risks that don't show up on any statement mailed to a retiree's home address. So what actually happens next? The honest answer is that this doesn't resolve cleanly. There's no elegant policy solution that makes the math work without someone absorbing the loss. Either benefits get cut, which is politically explosive and in some states legally blocked, or taxes go up, which is politically toxic and economically constraining at the worst possible time, or the federal government steps in with another massive bailout, which just moves the problem up one level onto the national balance sheet, or the funds slowly deteriorate over 15 to 20 years as the gap widens until it becomes impossible to paper over. And the most likely outcome isn't one of these. It's a slow, grinding combination of all of them, because that's how these things actually work. Not with a single dramatic moment that makes the front page, but with a series of quiet adjustments that each sound reasonable on their own. A small benefit reduction here, a cost of living freeze there, a modest tax increase, a reduced payout for new retirees while protecting existing ones just enough to avoid a political explosion. And over time, the promise that was made to millions of workers erodes into something much smaller than what anyone agreed to. Death by 1,000 policy adjustments, none of which make the news cycle. And the people left holding the bag won't be the ones who designed the system or sat in the rooms where the assumptions were set and the contributions were skipped. They'll be the ones who trusted it, who planned around it, who made decades of life decisions based on a number that was always more fragile than anyone let on. The pension crisis isn't coming. For a lot of people, it's already here. The headlines just haven't caught up yet.